Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
the
FAIRtax Guys.
And we
I have a new prop here. Here you go. Disappeared into the glacier there for a second. Can. Yes, my cheerwine can.
A North Carolina tradition. I think Bob Paxton has a friend that puts a crate or two on a train that heads down to Ocala, Florida every so often.
That would be nice.
Do they sell cheerwine?
They have got cheerwine in bottles down here. I like it in the can. Some friends that from church that just went to West Virginia were kind enough to grab me a couple of 12 packs in the cans and bring it back to Florida here for me. But unfortunately, when we come up there, let's mention this as well. We'll be coming up there to WTOB in just a couple of weeks now, doing our annual live FAIRtax Power Radio show. But unfortunately, I don't think Delta Airlines will let me bring that back on the airplane because that exceeds their limit of how much liquid you can bring aboard.
That's right.
Well.
You could pack it in your carry-on, and it's like I said, you just go to Walmart and buy a set of clothes for every day you're up here. You won't have to worry about bringing any luggage.
If I tried to take that through the TSA checkpoint, the agent would take it and drink it himself. So
I'm sure that's happened a lot in a lot of instances. Not only that, but with pocket knives and other memorabilia that somebody picked up while they were on their travels. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, what a great program we had last week with Marissa. That was fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. If you didn't catch last week's FAIRtax Power Radio episode, we had Marissa Selvig, who I must say again is near and dear to our hearts here on FAIRtax Power Radio. She was the first candidate in the entire country to sign the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge.
That's right.
And she is still running. She was originally running as a Republican, has withdrawn from that, and is now running as the Constitution Party's candidate for Congress out there in Wyoming. Now, Liz Cheney has already been sent home. A lady named Harriet Hageman is the Republican nominee, and she's obviously considered the heavy favorite out there. But Marissa said she's the only person out there running on the fair tax. And with everybody really not liking the idea that there's going to be a whole new army of IRS agents unleashed on American taxpayers, she might be able to get some traction on that.
Do we want to invite people to the YouTube presentation of her debate so they can participate or follow along and see what it's like, how debates handle?
Yes, she did mention that there's going to be a debate that's going to be streamed by Wyoming PBS, the public broadcasting organization out there in Wyoming. But it will be on YouTube if you want to follow it. And
October 20th.
Okay, well, we'll have to look that up. We'll see if we can find some more details on where you can find that. And,
I just think folks that are interested in having candidates, handle how they handle the discussion of the fair tax in a debate situation. I think it would be advantageous. And of course, we know Marissa, candidate Selvig, is she's well versed in the fair tax, very passionate.
So.
And so, if you were considering a run for public office in the future, you might want to take and be supportive of the fair tax. You might want to take a look at this debate, because you will see Constitution candidate Marissa Selvig on the stage talking about the fair tax, and check her competitor's reaction to that particular line of debate if it comes up. And I would think that a conversation or a debate question would include taxes, since that seems to be everybody's flavor of the day today in Washington.
It's just a fact of life. There are only two positions. You're either for the fair tax and getting rid of the IRS, or you're for the income tax and you want to keep the IRS and everything that's coming down the pipe with it. So we'll have to check that out. Let's move on a little bit here on FAIRtax Power. Believe it or not, I don't have anything in FAIRtax, not FAIRtax, in Congress.gov talk about this week. But Congress has not been in session for the past several weeks. Now, I've been looking, but there's just really nothing up there while they're out. A lot of them are in their districts now. So we don't have anything to add to the Tax Reform Hall of Shame from
Right.
Congress.gov this week, but they'll be back in session soon. And hopefully we'll have some more stuff maybe next week here on
Oh,
Fairtax
yeah.
Power Radio. But I tell you what, this will just make your blood boil if you think about it. I found an article that was published on the Western Journal, the westernjournal.com. And
Yeah.
it's the headline: 82-year-old grandma hand filed taxes for years. One small mistake has the IRS demanding, get this, $2.1 million from this lady. And this is the agency that has just been given another, $80 billion to come after folks just like her.
Well, the thing about it is that she did it herself. And you know how complex a tax code is. I mean, you can't even figure it out if you had publication 17 in front of you while you were doing your tax returns. That's the form, that's the publication that tells you all the forms and how to use them and when and that kind of thing. So here she is, 82 years old. She's been hand filing, meaning she's doing them herself for years and years and years. So she gets a $2.1 million penalty charge because, wait for it, she didn't use the right form to file her taxes.
Let's give credit to the author here, Warner Todd Huston. I guess that's Houston.
Houston.
This article was published on September 2nd, 2022 at thewesternjournal.com if you want to look it up here. But let's kind of quote from it here a little bit. After Monica Toth, I guess that's the lady's name, Monica left Germany in the 1930s to escape Hitler's fascist empire. They landed in Argentina. She was born there in Argentina in 1940. By age 22, though, she had moved to the U.S. to start a family. And in the 80s, she became a naturalized American citizen. Here's where things start to go off the rails. In 1999, Toth's father left her $4.2 million in a Swiss bank account. Now, not being a tax accountant or a tax preparer, Monica was not aware of the arcane rule that Americans who own bank accounts in foreign countries must file an annual one-page form known as the Foreign Bank and Financial Accounts Report, or FBAR. This form basically alerts the federal government to the existence of that bank account and lists the assets therein. So she was required to just notify the IRS, the government here, that she had this bank account. She had no clue that that form even existed. So for years, she just didn't file it.
Crazy. I mean, and right. And so you would think that that somewhere, of course, now I'm sure she's going to get some legal advice on how to move forward on this. I would hope that they would be able to kind of mitigate that a little bit. 2.1 million. That's
a little farther down there.
What her inheritance was from
that
particular bank account.
A little farther down in this article, it says, eventually, though, she was made aware of the form that she needed to file, and she tried, to do the right thing, tried to retroactively file 5 years worth of forms in order to satisfy this obscure IRS rule. And as soon as she did that, that's when the IRS lowered the boom on her, and they said, all right, you've done this wrong for so long. Your penalty is $2.1 million. That is absolutely insane.
Yeah, it is. But, the IRS is claiming it's a penalty. It isn't actually a fine, so they can charge whatever they want without violating the Constitution. The Eighth Amendment's excessive fines clause is a key check on the government's power to punish. And according to Institute for Justice Attorney Sam Gedge, he said in a statement when Western Journal the article was written and put together, quote, "That is why the excessive fines clause is part of the Bill of Rights and why the federal courts need to take it seriously." And they basically just said, well, the IRS, we're not going to worry about that. Utter absence of proof that the elderly woman criminally sought to hide millions of dollars from the federal government. If she were an intentional drug dealer or a hardcore criminal, her lawyer said that the initial $40,000 in back taxes paid and her compliance with FBAR forms since 2010 should have been quite enough to satisfy the law. And the article ends by talking about the IRS is basically using a mere a bureaucratic wordplay as an excuse to confiscate her wealth, and in doing so, violating all of our rights and freedoms. The Eighth Amendment is their protection, but if the government can escape judicial scrutiny or ruinous fines by clever wording, nothing would be out of the reach of the federal government. That, according to Monica's Toth's attorney, Brian Morris.
Yeah, she's saying that after she filed their FBAR reports, tried to do the right thing, what did the IRS do? They audited her. And initially claimed that she owed $40,000 in back taxes, which she paid.
Right.
And she thought that would bring her up to date. She could go forward without any problems. But then they said, instead of realizing her situation and realizing it was just, sheer ignorance of the law and giving her the benefit of the doubt, they treated her like an international criminal. And they tried to take about half of her wealth as penalties
because
for breaking off.
Bob Scarborough's opinion, they saw that bank account and they're going, that could have been out. And don't the agents get some kind of perk or something? I know they don't get a commission, but I've heard, and maybe I'm wrong about this, and I hope somebody will correct me because I don't want to be inaccurate on the reporting. Although it'll take 25 years to find out if I was right or not, if we had to call the Internal Revenue Service to get an answer. But don't the agents get, not a commission, but don't they get some kind of ring a bell or something? They get a special.
I don't know that for sure either, but I'm sure that the agents are ranked on their effectiveness. Anybody in any job gets an evaluation of how well you're doing your job.
Yeah,
and
at least they get a better office or something.
Well, I say Steve mentioned the other day that if the IRS comes to you and they can't find anything wrong, that they'll make up something because they can't come home back to the office empty-handed.
Right.
They'll say, you didn't do anything wrong, but I'm going to disallow some of your deductions. And so I'm sure that agents are rated somehow internally. It'd be nice if we could file a FOIA request and get some of these things and see how they're rated. And if you lean on folks and bring in a lot of money, that you advance in your position. But again, the key point for bringing all this up is the IRS does not have to exist. There is an alternative. We can get rid of everything that they're doing. We can get rid of the entire agency by passing the fair tax, which is exactly what we're trying to do. And as I say, I was encouraged last week to hear that Marissa was saying people are now, they're aware. They know what's going on with the new IRS or the bigger, meaner IRS. They don't like it. And so
under greater scrutiny, individual.
So she's out there offering them an alternative. Hey, if you don't like the IRS and the income tax, elect me and I will work to pass the fair tax.
And I'm hoping that we'll have between now and 2024, that we'll have more people who are willing to step up and run on a platform that includes the enactment of the fair tax, to go into Congress, to campaign, to win, to go into Congress and to say, let's bring this out of committee, because it's been in the committee, House Ways and Means, for how many years now? A lot.
It was first introduced in 1999, so it's been up there for more than 20 years. It's never gotten out of committee. That tells you that the Congress critters and the lobbyists up there are making too much money and exerting too much influence over people's lives using the income tax code, and they want to keep it the way it is. This would be a good time to encourage folks to go to fairtax.org, get under the Get Involved tab there, go to the Candidate Pledge page there, download a copy of the Fair Tax Candidate Pledge, and take it to your candidates and see if they'll sign it or not.
Right, have it with you. Keep it in your glove box in your car. A lot of people keep stuff other than gloves in their glove box. This would be a really good thing to have in the car. And you can find out when, even in or out of the election cycle, and neither one way or the other, and say, okay, well, we're going to stop by, candidate or Representative Smith's office when he's in town, and we're going to set up an appointment and go in and not a confrontation, but a conversation
Mhm.
with that representative that you and of course in North Carolina they've changed the districts again, and so my who I voted for the last election cycle is no longer going to be I have to vote again for a new old
Yeah.
actually representative.
You got redistricted.
And then redistricted. It's a double
Yeah.
redistricting that happened here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so I think that's fine. I agree and I believe in making sure the districts represent the people that are in that live there, and you don't want people to live in a particular area that aren't where they're not going to be fairly or in their mind fairly, or our minds fairly equally represented. I think it's good to have those lines, but lines that are look like me trying to tie my shoes in the morning before I have a first cup of coffee. We don't want those district lines to look like my shoelaces.
Yeah,
But
well, we've been at this for quite a while, and we have learned sometimes the hard way, and sometimes through people like Marissa, who has told me this before, that it is often not often, it's practically universally a lot easier to elect someone who is already a fair tax supporter than it is to try to make a fair tax supporter out of somebody that's already up there feeding at the congressional trough.
That's right.
So if you can take your fair tax candidate pledge, you can download a hard copy off of fairtax.org, take it to your candidates, ask them to sign it. If they won't, ask them, well, what do you love so much about the IRS? See what kind of answer you get. There are some instructions there on that page of what to do with it if you can get a pledge signed and get some pictures taken and video as well as you will. And we'd like to talk to as many fair tax candidate pledge signers as we can here on Fair Tax Power Radio. But so there's one thing to do. We need to get on before our time gets away from us again. You sent me another. You had stepped up very well into Ron Malero's shoes. He was always sending me articles that he has found that's relative to the IRS and relative to the fair tax and all. You think that your information that you send to the IRS is confidential? Well, not so much. You sent this article where actually one of the TV stations down here close to where I live in Florida says that the IRS, quote, accidentally published some taxpayers' confidential information on its website. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
And it's a challenge. I mean, and I think security for networks, especially government networks, because you've seen pictures of folks sitting at computers in, supposedly in China or Russia or somewhere, and all they're doing is trying to hack into protected networks. That this is something that, and again, it will end up, I'll go ahead and say it, this is why we don't need the Internal Revenue Service. Now we'll go backwards and say your confidential information is available through a lot of different places. It's available through your online bank. It's available through credit card service that you have. If you go online to look at your charges or pay your bill, your information is there. It's available in a number of different places. There is probably no other place where so much of your confidential information is consolidated than at a U.S. Treasury website tied to your tax returns, because you have a lot of things that are going on there. Taxpayers' confidential information. Thanks to Jessica.
This article that we're looking at is at WFTV.com. If you want to go there and check it out, WFTV.com. It's Channel 9 in Orlando.
Right.
And, you're right. You mentioned Jessica Goodman's the author. This was published on September 2nd. If you want to go there and read the whole thing, we can just kind of touch on the highlights here. But it says the IRS accidentally posted data from a tax form that individuals and tax-exempt organizations use. And they said that about 120, about 120,000 individuals were affected. The information came from Form 990-T, which is required for people with individual retirement accounts who earn certain types of business income in those retirement plans, blah, 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 blah. So you can't figure out what they want because it's so complicated. But Again, the bottom line, your confidential information is not safe with the IRS, even if they try to tell you that it is.
Well, those kinds of tax forms are supposed to be confidential, but they are supposed to be made public for charities. The Wall Street Journal had this article that's being reported to about through WFTV. Well, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Internal Revenue Service and the Treasury Department blamed the confidential data on the website to a human coding error, which they both said happened last year when Form 990T started to be filed electronically. Mm-hmm. So basically, non-public data was accidentally included with the public data and was available for searching and downloading on the IRS website. So 990T is for people with individual retirement accounts and also for charities.
Yes.
So somebody got up and did something and came back and flipped a switch. And so does that mean that maybe they should have, if there was in a perfect world in the Internal Revenue Service, which doesn't make sense at all, even if it came out of my mouth.
In a perfect world, there is no Internal Revenue Service.
But wouldn't you think that they would come up with another dash after the 990 so that private public information wouldn't be collected on the same floor? Is that part of the Paperwork Reduction Act of?
Oh, who knows? But I say our time's getting away from us. But the bottom line we needed to make is that if you're an 82-year-old lady that inherited money that's in a foreign bank account and you don't file this form, the IRS will come after you for $2 million. That's about half of what you had. They will publish your confidential information on a website and call it an accidental mistake. And the bottom line, none of this has to happen because the IRS does not have to exist. We have an alternative. It's called the fair tax, and we need to elect candidates who will support the fair tax and get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, all of these abuses. And I imagine the stories are only going to get worse when this new army of agents that has been authorized by law starts doing their thing. That's insane. Real quick, one more time. You sent another article that we want to read. This is a poll of what people think these new IRS agents are going to do. Now, of course, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen until it actually happens, though we got a pretty good idea that they're not going to be coming after the 1% because those guys pretty well have their taxes in order. They're going to be coming after the people who don't have the resources that the 1% have to get their taxes done right and don't have the resources to fight back. But this was... let's see where it is.
It's a nationwide survey that was conducted August 19th through the 23rd. There were a little over 1,000 respondents of likely general election voters. Margin of error about 2.9%. And the Trafalgar Group did this study. New IRS employees was one of the first segments. President Biden just signed the legislation allowing the Internal Revenue Service to hire 87,000 new employees. How do you believe those new employees will be used? 33% said to audit middle-class Americans and small businesses. 31% said to audit wealthy Americans and large corporations. To target political opponents of those in power, a little under 16%.
Surprised that number's as low as it is. I think that should be a lot bigger.
Well, where the interesting cross section comes for me is when new IRS employees question was asked of Democrats, 14.8% said to audit middle class Americans and small businesses, and 49% said to audit wealthy Americans and large corporations. And when you ask that of a Republican respondent, the same question, 50.6% said to audit middle class Americans and small businesses, and only 15.9% said to audit wealthy Americans and large corporations. So politically, on the political spectrum, there's that much difference in the way we think about the IRS. And I think I get that sometimes when we talk about the fair tax, and that's a conservative program and we don't need any of that mess. But truly, the fair tax is nonpartisan. We're not interested in how the money gets spent. We're just interested in how it's collected and received into the coffers at the U.S. Treasury. And I think that's the important part about it, is we can debate all we want to about where the money goes or how it's used. That's something for a whole different track. but to be able to say the way the taxes are collected, the way we get more control over it as individuals is through a tax on consumption, which is the fair tax. But it's interesting that specifically about new IRS employees, the GOP, the Republican voter respondent in this particular poll is heavily in favor of it being done to audit middle-class Americans and small businesses.
No, I don't think they're in favor of it. They're afraid that's what's going to happen.
They're in favor of that question. Yes, they're more apt to think that's going to happen. Yes, to be clear, 50.6% of Republican respondents say that the new IRS agents are going to be used to audit middle-class and small businesses.
Yeah, but you're right. I don't know anybody of any political ideology or party affiliation that would not like to have more money in their paycheck because the withholding goes away, more money in their paycheck because the payroll taxes go away. I don't know anybody who enjoys filling out tax returns and tax forms and sending them in every year, telling the government all that. I mean, you don't have to be a conservative or a Republican to appreciate all of the good things that the fair tax is going to do for you. It's going to put more money in your pocket. It's going to simplify your life. Get this? The fair tax will give you a prebate every month to refund the taxes that you pay on your basic necessities. Well, I don't want that. I'm a Democrat. That doesn't make sense.
Because you basically, and you say prebate and people go, prebate, what's that? And then you say, okay, well, you are untaxed. You're actually getting money back like you would get at the end of your filing period and on April 15th. But you would end up with that money in your pocket at the beginning of every month. And then you could spend that on whatever you consider to be an essential.
The prebate is a tax refund of money that was collected from you that you do not owe, because under the fair tax, you do not owe a dime until your spending exceeds the poverty level. So you collect it on every sale, but you get back what you don't owe. And that's going to...
Here's an interesting category, the age and gender breakdown, which we didn't talk about. We just talked about the political side. But 18 to 24-year-olds believe 29%, 29% of 18 to 24-year-olds believe that the new employees at the Internal Revenue Service are going to audit wealthy Americans and large corporations. 29%. 15% believe they will audit middle-class Americans and small businesses. 27% of 18 to 24-year-olds believe that they will target the political opponents of those in power. So they're if you want to categorize that as, because you hear everybody say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. 18 to 24-year-olds are into that polarization that takes place in terms of fairness, of even-handed and fairness in terms of application of laws and things that happen within to us within the government. The government is doing either to us or for us.
Yeah, well, those are interesting numbers, but I'm afraid the number on the clock on the wall up there says that our time is flat gone. So we've got to wrap up this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Thank you again so much for watching and listening. Please share these videos if you can. But until we meet again, we are the FAIRtax Guys. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
Reminding you, as we always do, the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? What'd you say, 40,000? Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?
Oh, you'd bring home every penny.